All right. Good morning, everyone. One moment, make sure my volume is all the way down on this. All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Joaquin Esquivel, Chair of the State Water Resources Control Board. Today is Wednesday, September 3rd. It is 9:02 a.m., and I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'm being joined this morning by my colleagues, Vice Chair Doreen Diadamo, Board Member Nicole Morgan, Board Member Laurel Firestone, and Board Member Sean McGuire. We're also joined by our executive staff. Joining us shortly will be our Executive Director, Eric Oppenheimer, our two Chief Deputies, Karen Mogus and Eric Ekdahl. Joining us this morning from the Office of Chief Counsel is Phil Wiles. Our Clerk of the Board is Courtney Tyler, and assisting her this morning is Margie Argel and Susan Reyes. As you can see, this is a hybrid meeting with both in-person and web components. If you're joining us virtually, you're either viewing us through our customary webcast on the Cal EPA website or the YouTube live website. But if you intend on commenting on any of today's items, you need to be on the Zoom platform. There is instructions at the top of the agenda, a link, and a form to fill out. If you're having any challenges, though, getting onto the Zoom platform, please do just email the clerk of the board at board.clerk@waterboards.ca.gov, and she can help get you on the platform. Once you are on the platform, your camera will be off. You will be on mute until it's your turn to speak on the item you've indicated. For everyone in the room, good morning. Good to see you all. We're here in Sacramento in the California Environmental Protection Agency building. A few announcements for us as well. Please do observe the exits. If we happen to have an emergency, we'll calmly file out to Cesar Chavez Plaza and await further direction. Also, if you intend on commenting on any of today's items, you need to sign up, and there is a QR code at the side of the room, and there is also a laptop to do so. Once you're at the mic, please do introduce yourself if you feel comfortable and your affiliation. And then lastly, please do silence any phones just so that we have an uninterrupted discussion this morning. And with that, we have a few public forum commenters. I believe our first commenter this morning is Eric Buescher, be followed by Ray Tahir, and then we have a third commenter, and I'll look at my list here momentarily, but we can begin with Eric.
Thank you, Chair Esquivel. Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and board members. My name is Eric Buescher. I'm the managing attorney at San Francisco Baykeeper. I appreciate you providing me the time to appear this morning. I'm here to ask that the board grant the extension requested by Baykeeper and our partners for comments and board hearings regarding the July 2025 proposal to update Phase 2 of the Bay Delta Water Quality Control Plan and to address just some of the problems with the approach proposed in that draft. The Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta is a critically important natural resource for California. It is the most valuable estuary and wetlands on the western coast of the Americas. It is widely recognized that the Bay Delta ecosystem is in a state of crisis. While natural conditions have not existed in the Bay Delta watershed for more than 100 years, many of the native fish and wildlife species that are now at the verge of extinction maintained healthy populations until the past several decades when water development intensified. For decades, there has been a substantial reduction in flows and significant changes in the timing and distribution of those flows, and species have been cut off from natal waters. Fish species have continued to experience precipitous declines since the last major update and implementation of the Bay Delta Plan in 1995 that was intended to halt and reverse the aquatic species declines occurring at that time. Since the adoption of the 2006 Bay Delta Plan, concerns related to the protection of beneficial uses in the Bay Delta have escalated. Central Valley salmonids have experienced significant declines. At the same time, various pelagic species continue to decline. Current policies have been disastrous for desirable fish. The best available science indicates that the existing requirements are insufficient and that a comprehensive regulatory strategy addressing the watershed as a whole is needed. Flow and physical habitat interact in many ways, but they are not interchangeable. Existing regulatory minimum delta outflows would not be protective of the ecosystem, and without additional in-stream flow protections, existing flows may be reduced in the future, particularly with climate change and additional water development. The overall health of the estuary for native species is in trouble, and expeditious action is needed on the watershed level to address the crisis, including actions by the state water board. None of those words were mine. All of them were written by this board. And the board is not alone. The California Department of Fish and Wildlife, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the National Marine Fisheries Service, and the Environmental Protection Agency have echoed, confirmed, and elaborated on those determinations. As the EPA explained in January of 2024, large-scale increases in both flow and habitat restoration are needed to recover and protect native species. It continued, swift action is needed to address the imperiled state of the Delta and the species, communities, and economies that depend on this ecosystem for survival. For 16 years, this board has known of the crisis it faces and understood what was needed to address it. And yet for 16 years, the board has delayed implementation of any meaningful change that would do so. 6 weeks ago, the board announced a new draft plan that all but abandons this 16-year project. Reasonable protection of recreational, tribal, and commercial fisheries. Adopting the draft plan would continue 3 years of closures. The migration and estuary and cold water habitat beneficial uses, they're not reasonably protected now, and none will be meaningfully improved or reasonably protected by the draft plan going forward. Reasonable protection of the rare beneficial use designed to protect and restore endangered fish. Adopting the July draft plan would choose extinction instead. Ultimately, the newest draft places political expediency, the interests of corporate agribusinesses and landowners like Chevron and private real estate trusts over preventing the collapse of the Bay Delta ecosystem, over protecting wildlife, fisheries, and Delta communities, over, by its own words, what the board knows needs to be done. The board has seen the iceberg from the helm of the Titanic for 16 years. It has identified ways to turn the ship. But the July draft plan instead concludes that rearranging the deck chairs is enough. And now the state board insists on acting quickly. Given the proposal presented in July and August to the public, significant additional time is needed to develop substantive input in the hope of avoiding the worsening of the human and ecological crises in the Delta and San Francisco Bay's watershed. I ask that you grant the extension request, rethink the draft plan announced in July, and resume the board's 16-year project of materially changing for the better the way water in the Bay Delta and the state is regulated. Thank you very much for your time.
And thank you for yours, Mr. Boucher. I appreciate your advocacy and your words and engagement on what is a top priority for this board when it comes to the update of the Bay Delta plan. Apologies, but won't be able to provide much back and forth with you now. I know when it comes to extension of the deadline, we did add an additional 20 days currently. I know that there is still an additional request out for additional days that is being considered here. But just thanks. I appreciate your advocacy. I appreciate your engagement on this critical project, and I look forward to what are going to be further discussions here at the dais that are not during public forum. So thank you. Next, I'd like to call up Right to Hear, be followed by Dr. Donna Miranda Begay, and our last commenter this morning is Chris Caitlin.
Next slide, please. By the way, good morning to you, board. My name is Ray Tahir, and I'm with Texas Environmental. Office of Chief Counsel Lawford graciously responded to the 3 questions I asked during my August 29th board presentation. Question 1, what was the date on which Port of Cologne version 13287, dated January of 2019, was amended by the legislature? Mr. Lawford's response was 13287 was not amended. The bracketed definitions, ex parte communications for certain general orders, disclosure requirements, and remedies was added as an aid to the reader. The added language to 13287 dated January of 2019 is invalid because it was never amended. The terms general orders, disclosure requirements, and remedies are ghosts. They do not exist. General orders, as I mentioned, are nowhere to be found in federal law, and they are not mentioned anywhere in state law, yet they are referenced 26 times in Office of Chief Counsel's Q&A issued in April of 2013. They are also mentioned in a state board notice dated December of 2012, as shown below. Next slide, please. Okay, under part ex parte disclosure requirements for pending general orders. The prohibition against ex parte communications no longer applies to general waste discharge requirements, including MPDS permits, general waivers, and General Clean Water Act Section 401 water quality certifications. A general order does not name specific discharges, but instead allows eligible discharges to enroll. The following information will help the public comply with the requirement to meet statutory disclosure requirements, and that's not included in this slide. The terms disclosures relative to the disclosure model in 13287 is mentioned 46 times in the Q&A. That disclosure model determines what persons are and are not subject to permissible ex parte communication. Is also invalid. Because 13287 is invalid, by Boolean extension, SB 965 could also be invalid and in need of repeal. This means, I would think, that APA 4.5, which was initially intended to be replaced by 13287, now determines ex parte communication. Next slide, please. Question 2. Why the Office of Chief Counsel proposed not lifting permissible ex parte communication for MS4 and other stormwater permits? Mr. Loffer's response was, Office of Chief Counsel is not taking a position on lifting permissible ex parte communications for MS4 and other stormwater permits. Office of Chief Counsel has instead interpreted Water Code Section 13287 enacted by the legislature and signed by Governor Brown. Clearly, the Office of Chief Counsel has taken a position on the permissibility and impermissibility of MS4 permits, as revealed in its Q&A, in which it says MS4 permittees are named discharges and therefore not entitled to permissible ex parte communication. Whether the Office of Chief Counsel interpreted the law or not, in de facto terms, it determined the law, as expressed in Mr. Loffer's Q&A. Next slide, please. Mr. Loffer's additional response. He adds, most stormwater discharges are covered by general stormwater permits, and the proceedings to adopt those general permits are subject to the disclosure model of Water Code Section 13287. However, it has already been established that the disclosure model in 13287 is invalid, thereby negating this claim. Mr. Loffer further says MS4 permits are issued by the regional board pursuant to Water Code Section 13377, and those permits identify the municipalities that are subject to waste discharge requirements. Therefore, and this is key, they are not covered by Water Code Section 13287. Instead, they are subject to APA's Chapter 4.5, ex parte communication prohibition. Next slide, please. Further, it is true.
Mr. Tahir, I would ask that you try to wrap your points. It's gone a bit beyond 5 minutes at this point, so just if
I'm
you don't
almost
mind
done.
wrapping them. Yep.
Yeah, I'm almost
Thank you.
done.
Yeah.
Okay, actually, I asked for 8 minutes, but I'm going to be well under that. Okay.
Mr. Tahir, please. We'd like to be able to keep it to 5 minutes if you don't mind. Thank you.
Okay, can I finish this up? It's almost done.
Yep, please. Thank you.
Okay, it is true MS4 permits, which includes municipalities, are issued per 13377, but they are also authorized under the Clean Water Act. This is why MS4 permits include a MPDS order number, that is a waste discharge order number. where Mr. Lawford really goes astray. He claims that because MS4 permits are waste discharge requirements, they are not subject to 13287. But this conflicts what he has already said in his Q&A, that MS4 permits include named discharges per 13287, and therefore they are not entitled to permissible ex parte communication. What is also odd, he claims that because MS4 permits are not subject to 13287, they are subject to APA 4.5. However, as you should know, invalidating 13287 automatically causes a reversion to APA 4.5. Can I just do this one slide, Chair?
Mr. Tahir, I'd really like to be able to proceed with the meeting. So if you don't mind just wrapping your final point here, it'd be helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Well, in the final analysis, we know that 13287 is not valid. And I should point out that in March of 2006, the RB4 will be issuing a report of waste discharge for LA and Ventura MS4 permits. The issues 13287 and SB 965 need to be resolved before the report of waste discharge is issued. And I'll explain that a little later. And thank you for your patience. I appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you for your time this morning. Thank you, Mr. Tahir. Next, I'd like to call up Dr. Donna Miranda Begay, be followed by Chris Caitlin.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can. Thank you. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you very much to the Water Board and staff with the Water Board. Appreciate the opportunity to present quickly, under 5 minutes. We had a California Native American Tribal GIS Summit for the first time in California. It was held July 31st and August 1st in the Cal EPA building, actually where you're sitting. And we wanted really, the tribes were just, it was amazing summit. And I just wanted to put a special thank you to the Water Board. But I wanted to kind of cover a little bit about the summit, just FYI kind of information. We focused mainly on natural resources and protecting cultural landscapes and also environmental justice support with the use of technology called geographical information systems, which is mapping technology. And so next slide. We did this because why did we have a summit? Well, we know that with the 109 federally recognized tribes in California and 40 tribes seeking federal recognition, those are the non-federally recognized tribes, there's a lot of land back going on, rematriation, co-stewardship, cultural burns, good fires, conservation and protection of cultural landscapes occurring. And a lot of these activities require the knowledge of GIS mapping. There's also grants that are done, like especially by CAL FIRE, that require the use of GIS technologies. And we're also promoting the use of GIS for protecting our sovereignty in our cultural areas. So I'll go on to the next slide. So with the big movements that are happening in California for the tribes in regards to the land back and other areas, we reached out to the tribes in California. And when I say we, the Water Board helped to co-host this, as well as, my California Tribal GIS nonprofit. And we got 90 tribes participating. There's a map there showing where they came from. And there's also a table of some of the tribes that don't have land. And both federally and non-federally recognized tribes, because when we use that term, California Native American Tribe, in California, we include both federally and non-federally recognized tribes. About 280 in person and 230 virtual participant. And this event was free, by the way. And so there was so much good networking. It was great to see so many people in the lobby there at the second floor of the Cal EPA building. Yeah, next slide. We built the summit from the ground up, meaning I shared a vision out there with back on January 21st. And I'll tell you, in 9 minutes, I got a response from Adriana Rentiera with the Water Board. And she said, this sounded like a great idea. How can we help? And so we went from there, and we had about 7 major meetings with planning meetings with tribes and federal, state, nonprofit, academic partners. We built a great agenda and workshops and presentations, over 20 presentations and about 6 different workshops going on. And we ended up getting both Natural Resources Agency and Cal EPA Agency together. That was great. And even the governor's office participation with land land innovation and climate, land use and climate innovation, and also some of the folks from the Truth and Healing Circle. All right, next slide. And so again, special thank you to Adriana, I misspelled her name there, Adriana Ranchiera, Nathan Blacksmith, Molly Williams, Amy Croson, and board chairperson Joaquin Esquivel helped open it up. So thank you very much, Joaquin. And we just really enjoyed the fact that this was really a partnership with you guys. So yeah, all right, moving on. Next slide. So this is an important part of it, I guess, is the summit outcomes. Pretty much we were able to listen to tribes how to utilize GIS in their environment in protecting their areas and management of their natural resources. And so we had Randall Race Richards from the Tolowa Dene Nation up north, way up north in like Del Norte County, and also goes over into Oregon State. And then Crystal West, she did a really wonderful job with with a North Fork Mono tribal member. They co-hosted how they we're doing what's called decolonizing mapping systems, taking a look at historic maps, today maps, and looking back in the past as to our tribal ecological knowledge of that area. So they did a wonderful job with historic mapping and updating their cultural paths and routes. All right, next slide. And then other folks, like with the academics, we had Kent State University. They provided a lot of training in the land back area. They did a lot of good literature, research in that area for California, as well as UC Berkeley, this co-equal, you may be hearing more of that, collaboratory for equity and water allocation. And they put together with the workshop, the staff or the participants put together a word cloud, which is showing the relationship to water. So you can see that. And next slide. And so the major outcomes for policy I would recommend, and I see that other folks have recommended statewide, include GIS data when providing public notices to tribes about public land and water changes, I would suggest, and land back to include not only land, but also water, so water rights. And there is a need for beneficial uses in water and California water rights workshops and webinars. Promote GIS data sovereignty and tribal engagement and consultation process, allow for ground truthing, rematriation, TEK, and decolonizing mapping, and public natural resource management, planning, and decision-making, and taking a look at funding issues there, and also include the California public domain allotment lands, which I live on one. Make sure to include them on public maps, such as fire maps, flood maps, environmental maps. It's a great event, lots of good networking, and we're already planning for next year's annual Tribal GIS Summit. Last slide, I think. Next one. And this is where we're at now. We're underway. I'm heading to Redlands tomorrow to take a look at the Redlands University. And we're going through all these steps for planning for next year. There's my name, there's my contact, and please, board members and staff that are there, please feel free to visit the Google Drive for all the presentation materials. There's also the program is an excellent thing to go through, just the program alone. And I want to thank the graphics folk with the Butter Board. They did a really good job with everything, printing and signage and just the support overall. And then there's also the recordings for the webinars. Thank you very much for your time. Hope this enlightened you a little bit, and I hope you guys all have a great day. And thank you. And Asana Tali Witch, Pity You, it's in a good way, the circle that connects us.
Thank you, Dr. Miranda Begay. Really appreciate your leadership. This would not have come together if it wasn't for you really stepping up and having a vision for bringing together California's tribes around just really critical tools at this, as you noted, complex time around land back, but also a continued focus on water quality and water resources and their interaction with land, and importantly, supporting tribes and their ability to make sure and be able to manage their resources here jointly with all of us collectively at the state and federal levels as well. So just thank you. We wouldn't have been able to come together as we did without your leadership. Appreciate the shout out to folks here at the water boards and our sister agencies, and the quick recap. And for folks that are interested in the work, the links on the slides, we should be able to, I don't know if we provide our slides from public forum, but we'll do our best to make sure that's up somewhere on the website where people can access it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's definitely share it. Yeah, no problem. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
thank you so much, Donna. Thank
Bye.
you. All right, and that brings us to our last commenter, who will be Chris Catlin. And Chris, you should have been provided an opportunity to unmute and come on camera if you so wish. You may be away. Okay, you are unmuted, but we can't actually hear you though. So what you might need to do is select a different microphone. At the bottom of your screen, next to the mute button, there's a little caret. If you click on that, you should see then your kind of available microphones. Maybe select another one because you are unmuted, but we can't hear you currently. All right, apologies, Chris. We're still not hearing you. What we can do, though, is take your comment later in the meeting. We can just kind of have you pop on and provide it between our items once you have things resolved. Please do just email the clerk of the board if you're having challenges as well at board.clerk@waterboards.ca.gov. All right, we'll come back to you then, Chris. Thank you. All right, that concludes then public forum and brings us to our first item of board business, which is consideration of the adoption of board meeting minutes from the August 19th board meeting. Looking to fellow board colleagues if they have any adjustments, amendments, or ready for a motion.
I move adoption of the minutes.
I'll second.
Thank you both. Ms. Tyler, can you please call a roll call vote?
Vice Chair Diadamo,
Aye.
Board Member Firestone,
Aye.
Board Member McGuire,
Aye.
Board Member Morgan,
Aye.
and Chair Esquivel.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you as well. Board meeting minutes are adopted. And now brings us to item number 2, which is an informational item regarding the water supply and demand assessment program. I'll give a moment for folks to come up.
All right.
Good
Can you hear
morning.
me?
Good to see you all.
Good morning. My name is Philip Dutton. I'm a program manager and engineer here at the Division of Water Rights with our Supply and Demand Assessment Program. With me today, I have Aaron Raghazi, one of our assistant deputy directors at the division, as well as Mohammed Sarabi, a senior engineer and one of the supervisors here in my section. Today's informational item is an update on the work being done by the division's Supply and Demand Assessment Program. While we're not in drought now, this is important work being done following the last drought and will help repairs in future drought years. Next slide, please. Through today's presentation, we'll start with a quick program overview describing how the effort came out of the work done during the 2021 and 2022 Russian River drought response. Then we'll talk briefly about the water supply models being developed and the modeling process. We'll look at the development status for our different watershed models and how the public can engage in the development process. We'll share some of the data visualizations that are now available online, and we'll wrap up the presentation with some of the expected future uses of the model, tools, and data sets being developed, as well as what those next steps look like. Next slide, please. During the 21-22 Russian River drought response, we saw the benefit in having reliable water supply data to inform decision-making. Now, coming out of the drought, the Supply and Demand Assessment Program was formed, extending that ability to new watersheds by providing new data and tools. We've developed and executed a $15 million contract with Paradigm Environmental to develop water supply models for new selected watersheds, with the goal of providing valuable data and tools to the State Water Board and to local decision-making together, especially in times of water shortage. Next slide, please. So let's take a look at what that Russian River drought response was in a little bit more detail. The board adopted an emergency regulation that allowed for curtailments, and that regulation established a method for determining where water was available at a diverter's priority of right. Then curtailments were done based on water supply assessments informed by observed conditions and modeled water supply forecasts. The allocation tool that staff used divided the watershed into 28 sub-watersheds, as shown in the map here. allowing the water right priority system to be applied at a very fine scale. The available data and tools also supported the development of the Russian River Voluntary Water Sharing Program. This was a locally initiated and locally managed alternative to curtailment. Next slide, please. The allocation tool used in the drought response was generally run on a monthly basis. It uses the outputs from the hydrologic models for the water supply in a given period. Meanwhile, division staff have then cleaned up and processed annual water use reports to develop a data set that represents the surface water demands in the watershed. The tool then assigns and optimizes available water supplies to meet those demands using the water right priority system in those subwatersheds. Now, coming out of the drought, the Supply and Demand Assessment Program is charged with developing similar hydrologic models or water supply models, data sets, and tools for these newly selected watersheds. Next slide, please. At this point in time, the Supply and Demand Assessment Program is working in 18 watersheds across the state. This includes our continuing work in the Russian River, doing our monthly analysis. It includes work being done in 3 pilot watersheds to start our efforts, the Navarro River, the Napa River, and Butte Creek. We added additional watersheds, primarily on the north and central coast, following a series of public meetings in May and June of last year. And I'll note that the assignment of these watersheds to the contractor had been somewhat staggered. That's to say we haven't started work all at once on every single watershed. An additional note is that the names of the watersheds you see on the list here are generally following the USGS naming conventions. And in some cases, the extent of our modeling extends beyond what might be locally understood by those names. Examples might include coastal watersheds that feed, into the ocean and not directly into the named stream system. Big Creek or San Gregorio are examples of that. We've been slowly working through our local engagement and clarifying watershed names where that's helpful. The first example of that, Pismo Creek watershed was the original name, but we've clarified that now as Pismo Creek and San Luis Obispo Creeks because they are easier to understand by the local parties. Next slide, please. So for each of those 17 watersheds, the Russian River being the 18th, we are developing these new hydrologic models. Models are being developed using what's called the Loading Simulation Program in C++, but we'll just call that LSPC. LSPC will simulate the available supply in each watershed. This modeling framework uses meteorological data, such as precipitation, temperature, snow, and others. It includes active and historical stream gauge flow data. We're using the cleaned up water use reporting data that we talked about earlier to represent those surface water demands in the watershed. And the model uses watershed boundaries, stream channels, and other physical or geospatial properties of the land. Next slide, please. The slide here shows a simplified process outline of how the models are developed, and the colors on the map correspond to the current status for each watershed. This first phase is work plan development, where the work plan is a contract deliverable from the modeling contractor. That plan describes the data and methodology being used to create the watersheds model. It describes the objectives, the data, the methods, tasks. It provides both a technical roadmap and is a communication tool for partners and the public. Ultimately, that work plan is what sets the framework for the model development, and in short, explains what will be done, how it will be done, and in what sequence. Once those plans are reviewed and approved by our staff, the plan is prepared for web hosting, we've got it online, and Paradigm is beginning the data collection phase. Last week, staff here have approved the work plan for the Big Creek watershed, and at this point, we have no more watersheds with pending work plans, and we're working on posting all of the remaining work plans to our website once we get our accessibility work done. The second phase is data collection. Paradigm and SDA staff are collecting the necessary data for the models, as described in that work plan. Throughout that process, we're connecting with local experts to add invaluable watershed-specific knowledge and other data sources. Petaluma River, Sonoma Creek, San Lorenzo, and Santa Maria River watersheds are in the data collection phase, and you can see those as orange on the map here. After data collection comes model configuration, as shown in yellow. Model configuration is where Paradigm staff will prepare delineations of the watershed and its flow lines, identify the land uses and land covers, and prepare the different forcing inputs that will ultimately drive the model. Here we've got the Trinity River, San Gregorio Creek, and Pescadero Creek in the configuration phase. Calibration and validation in blue. This is where Paradigm is tuning the model parameters to improve the representation of the watershed conditions. And once the model is well calibrated, then the model goes to be validated by comparing its output to independent data, confirming its predictive ability. In blue, you see Butte Creek, the Mattole River, Puda Creek, the Napa River, and the Tamaulipas-Drakes Bay watershed. And the final step in the process is the preparation, review, and finalization of the model development report. This final step in the process, the watersheds here are shown in green. And you can see the asterisks there. Early in the development process, our program staff are working and focusing engagement and outreach with local agencies and partners, NGOs, water users, looking especially at areas where there's specific local knowledge that's critical in developing the work plan and gathering the appropriate data to create the models. Next slide, and we'll talk about how the public can engage with the model reports. Staff intend to solicit public review of each watershed's draft model report prior to finalizing it and using the model for analysis. As shown on the prior slide, several watersheds are now in this phase. Last week, staff sent out an email to our subscription list inviting comment and review of the draft report for the Navarro River watershed. That review period is open now through October 9th, and comments can be emailed to program staff at the email at the bottom of the slide. Not far behind, the draft reports for the Gualala River and Salmon Creek watersheds will be available soon, and a similar email will be sent out when those reports are available. Next slide. This is a taste of the model reports. These reports are to provide a comprehensive record of the model development process. It serves as a technical document explaining the scientific basis and integrity of the model. Generally, the reports include a discussion of the model network of catchments, the model's climate inputs, the surface water diversions, and a detailed discussion on the calibration and validation assessment and metrics of the model. I'll now invite Mohammed here to share a little bit more about the models in detail.
Hello, everyone. Can you go to the next slide, please?
Oh, sorry. Just make sure your mic is on. Thank you.
It's on. Okay. Is it better? Okay. Okay. So we use the stream flow gauge to calibrate and validate Navarro River model, which is a conventional and widely used approach for calibration and validation of hydrologic models. In the calibration process, models parameters are adjusted in the way that simulated stream flow matches and fits the observed stream flow. And in the validation procedure, the model is run using the adjusted parameters, but for different period than the calibration period, so that we can see that how the adjusted parameter or calibrated model performs under different condition that the calibrated period. For Navarro model, the model was calibrated for 2018 and was validated for 2004 to 2017. We evaluated the performance of the model using visual and statistical approaches. In the visual approach, we compare hydrograph of the simulated stream flow with that of observed to see that how simulated stream flow hydrograph follows the hydrograph of the observed stream flow. And for statistical metrics, we used statistical metrics that have been widely used in hydrologic model calibration and validation. And according to the model performance evaluation, Navarro River model showed very good performance across all conditions and metrics. Please go to our website and go through the model report. We have done several analyses. You can see all the analysis over there. Next slide, please. We use similar approach for Gualala River as well. So we calibrated the model using a stream flow gauge. We calibrated the model for 2018 and 2023, and the model was validated for 2008 to 2017. Gualala River model also showed very good performance across all conditions and all metrics. Next slide, please. We're going to develop supply and demand visualization dashboard for all watersheds. You can see in this slide a screenshot of the dashboard, visualization dashboard. As you can see, it includes 3 categories: water use demands dashboard, historic and current supply and demand estimates. Water use demands dashboard will be published first. Currently, we have developed water use demands dashboard for 9 watersheds, including Russian, Navarro, and Gualala rivers. Once we finalize the supply models, we will develop the other 2 dashboards for the watersheds. Then we will run the model every month and update the dashboard monthly. Next slide, please. This slide shows a screenshot of the water use demand visualization dashboard for Navarro. It can provide key information. For example, you can see how water use demand changes from a wet year to a dry year, or what part of the watershed has higher demand, or you can see that what are the purpose of use for the diverted water across the watershed or at a specific area or a specific sub-watershed. Next slide, please. This is the screenshot of supply and demand estimate visualization dashboard for Russian River. Again, I encourage you to go to our website, play with this dashboard, and understand what information you can get from this dashboard. For example, you can, using this dashboard, you can understand what months that you may face some water shortages, and how supply and demand looks like across the watershed or at a specific sub-watershed or in your area. You can search for your water right ID and see how supply and demand looks based on your water right priority and available water right looks like for you, or what time in a year you can face some shortages. With that, I pass it back to Phil.
So as we wrap up, a couple of the future uses. I want to note that the models, data sets, visualizations, and tools, these are intended to support local planning and decision-making. And from our local engagement to date, we've heard a lot of interest in how these can be used in the future. This includes evaluating different approaches and strategies for managing water demands in times of shortage and looking at different types of water conservation plans. But it also looks at supporting the evaluation and implementation of possible new wet season storage projects that could replace dry season direct diversions. But globally, a benefit of this work is the ability to provide water users, diverters, and other parties easy access to quantifiable supply and demand data. And I do want to say that certainly this work can also be used to inform potential board actions during future drought or water shortage periods. And then finally, next steps on the next slide. Actions you can kind of expect from us as we wrap. Model development, it certainly continues, and we'll be soliciting public review of our work in each watershed as we proceed. Then as we finalize those models, staff plan to evaluate the current conditions and abilities to forecast additional seasonal water supply information. We'll look at monthly estimates of water supply and demand assessments as we've been doing in the Russian River. And we'll try to evaluate the impact of extreme water supply events. Staff plan to develop capacity for interested parties to use the LSPC models by including an upcoming workshop on the technical modeling platform with details to be announced, but we're envisioning this workshop to help interested parties access and use the completed models. Local agencies, NGOs, academics, and others can then start to use the models to study additional scenarios and inform their own water management decisions. Throughout our work, we'll continue ongoing engagement and collaboration with those interested parties, including additional engagement with local water users, agencies, and others. Next slide. We encourage all and any interested parties to subscribe to our email subscription list. We're posting all details of our work to our program webpage here. You can find approved work plans, watershed fact sheets, the data visualizations Mohammed shared, and detailed information describing our demand QA/QC process. If you have any questions, certainly we're eager to hear emails and other comments and feedback at our shared inbox here. And then, I just wanted to thank the board for having us today. We're excited to share what we've been working on and happy to take any questions or comments.
The thanks is all ours, and truly just really appreciate the foundational work here. Just incredibly critical, as we well know here within the state, but importantly critical that we take these years right now where we aren't in the middle of a drought and really begin and ensure that we have planning, data, and work in place to make us better responders in the next turn of the drought, which we know is inevitable. So just first, a lot of thanks for the work that's gone on, and thanks to the watersheds as well that you were all working within. I know that there's a lot going on right now, but the engagement from water right holders around all this work is really critical. And I guess to that question, just wondering, what you've seen as a response in the watersheds that you're working with. I think we all know, oftentimes on the reporting side, we're not seeing, the sort of completion numbers that we would like, and can't help but feel that, a presence in the watersheds, working with water right holders, helps emphasize the importance of that reporting data. Without that water rights reporting data, we wouldn't be able to engage in these sorts of projects and be able to provide the information back into the watersheds as a service and as a critical foundation for decision making. So just kind of wondering what you've seen, if you've seen, as you've done the QA/QC, say on data and gone through and you're, refining the models, if you're seeing a little bit more of a responsiveness from water right holders in those watersheds, insofar as their reporting, or if you're seeing people starting to get in there and reporting that you hadn't prior. Just kind of wondering how this project is helping us with ensuring that we're receiving the data that we need to be able to conduct this sort of work.
Yeah, I think, the first response when we encounter, a new watershed, I think there tends to be fear or apprehension of potential board action. I think that's to be expected. But I think we have a pretty easy sell in terms of being able to provide data, tools, and information to support local decision making. I think that's people have generally been pretty responsive to that. It's a half answer to your question, but I think one of the things to highlight is the way that this work can couple with the Cal Water's Upward Project and the future of data reporting within the Division of Water Rights. We've been closely engaged with that group, in terms of how we are a customer of the division's data sources, and we can inform, across the division, improvements to how we're receiving data quality as well as data responsiveness.
I really appreciate that, and that is a really good point. Just that as we move to implement this fall our new water rights data system, it complements this work incredibly well, and it feeds off of it both on the data development side, but then also when it comes to the products that we're able to provide for watersheds. So really appreciate that point.
And I'll just tag on because I think Philip's underselling a little bit of the outreach that they've done. I attended one of the meetings specifically in the Navarro watershed, and it was obvious that there was a good exchange of information between the community and interested parties as well as the board, and there was an education component to it too. So, we did talk about reporting and how you report and when the deadline is for reporting. So there is that element that is also occurring in the watersheds as they go out and talk with folks. So I think there's an added benefit there. And I think over time, we may see that reflected in the data that's coming back in terms of water use reports and things. But I think it's too early for us to tell at this point.
That's really appreciated, though, and can imagine, always, obviously, when a regulator comes into a space, folks are concerned, are you going to be acting? Are you going to be doing something? And in this case, it's really providing us in common the data and the information to act wisely. at some future point. And that includes at the local level. And I think I just appreciate all the lessons I know we learned in the Russian River watershed that are being applied here and being expanded, because it was an incredible feat these last years in being able to administer water rights, but also having a community of water right holders working with us, knowing that continuum of decision making from the local level to the state and even the federal level has to be based off of good information. It has to be common information amongst us. And the state board has an ability to help provide that as much as it can also act. So just thanks. I really appreciate the presence, the really incredible work. Again, this is really important work to do now. We know there will be another drought, and the work that we're able to do now in preparation for that is just really critical. So much appreciated. And I know, Board Member McGuire and others have been so good about reminding us of the work we need to do outside of drought. So really appreciate the presentation and just the work that's gone on here. Looking to fellow board colleagues for comments and questions. We don't have any commenters on this item, so we're on the power of our own questions here at the dais. Board Member McGuire, since
you
called upon you.
You name dropped me a little bit. I completely agree with the chair's comments about the importance of doing this work, and so thankful that we have the resources and the ability and the time to be able to invest in better understanding these watersheds, where the water is going and where it's coming from. We really can't make sound water management decisions without this information. So I think I was saying in our briefing how I think we'll be asking ourselves the questions, how did we do anything? A couple years from now, once we have these models, once they're finalized, we'll take it for granted that these are such important and vital tools to the work that we need to do. So thank you also. So on that, I do have a couple of questions. And this is really in the interest of just better understanding where we are and where we're going, because there is a lot going on right now. And so one of the questions that came to mind is, well, the complexity in water is that there's often a lot on the surface and there's often a lot underground as well, and that there's an interaction between the two. And I think we've seen that in the Russian River watershed. We've also seen that in areas where we've implemented emergency regulations, like in the Scott River watershed, and have done a lot of work in both those places on developing tools that represent surface water, groundwater interactions and modeling that. And so in the Russian River, there's a USGS model that has served to work on that, which we've supported and worked on, and similarly in Scott. So just wondering how these tools that you've been developing, do they look at groundwater pumping? I get concerned about these smaller watersheds. The smaller you get, the bigger influence you might see. Or do we even understand what that influence is? So just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think, to some extent, a lot of the watersheds you saw on that map are smaller coastal watersheds that don't have expansive alluvial valleys with tremendous amounts of groundwater pumping that impacts the surface water supply. But in the watersheds where that does, I would say to date, we've had really successful relationships with the GSAs in those areas where there are high priority or medium priority basins. Napa County, I think, is a tremendous example of that. We've got an MOU with the Napa County GSA, and we're building on their groundwater modeling effort and incorporating a groundwater modeling component into our LSPC surface water model. Similarly, we're not quite as far along, but Slow and Pismo Creeks and the vineyards and groundwater uses down there, I think, are going to be similarly impactful. And we've already been in contact and had discussions with the GSA down there and San Luis Obispo County. So I expect, to the extent where there is groundwater, we've had good relationships building with the GSAs and those that are already addressing groundwater quality. I think, if you're interested in more details, Mohammed can probably speak to some of the capabilities of how groundwater is considered in the LSPC modeling framework when we're not looking at, a groundwater specific model. There's some simplifying assumptions, maybe is a way to put it, in terms of how it approaches groundwater and the water balance. And in the case where we see that those assumptions aren't holding, that's when we've been reaching out and doing more of a conventional groundwater modeling component.
Appreciate that. And we probably don't have to go into a great substantial detail today. Just maybe put a pin in that for future conversation as we go forward. I think it'll become more important to understand, especially in times of water shortage, right? When we have droughts, and I think the Napa River is a great example. The river went dry for a portion just a couple of years ago, and a better understanding what the causes of that were and to what extent was it groundwater pumping that was in part influencing that, I think is really vital. So my other question is about how you envision using this tool prospectively. And that would be things like, as we're looking at climate change influence on hydrology, and also things like in-stream flow requirements. Are those, for example, are those built in or considered in the tool? I noticed a couple of the watersheds that you're working on models for are in the Bay Delta watershed, specifically Butte Creek and Puda Creek watersheds. And if I missed one, I don't think I did, but maybe I did. So just wondering again how you're incorporating that thinking. We have a very substantial update to the Bay Delta Water Quality Control Plan in active consideration right now, which would affect those two watersheds in particular. So just again, wondering how you think these tools, either as they're being implemented now, could be used, or maybe in the future could be used for assessing those different types of circumstances.
Yeah, I think these are kind of the foundational level of water supply understandings that'll be meaningful to assess, Puda and Butte, to my understanding, do not have proposed VAs. They're outside of that effort. So there's a lot of room for understanding the water supply in those smaller watersheds in ways that maybe are not directly considered in part. I think the focus of this effort really looks at the watershed itself and maybe not so much its contribution to the broader, Bay Delta. So there's an interest in looking at kind of the scope and scale. One of the, you talked about environmental flows. Mohammed, I know, has got ideas on looking at supply forecasting going forward, and where in the water year we can start to do maybe seasonal forecasts of water supply availability in these watersheds. So these are all the types of avenues that I really see by having this foundational level of water supply, quantification, that we'll be able to start to evaluate and study in the future. We're in a very, developmental phase right now, getting these models prepared. Once we've got them, our task and our scope kind of shifts. And so looking at, the impact of environmental flows, we haven't been able to really study that yet because we don't know what the what the supply looks like. Looking at, storage projects, looking at longer term, water availability for permitting, perhaps. Those are all types of things that I see this being that foundation that's going to inform a lot of that work in the future.
And I'll just add one, I think, additional thought to your question. I think the value of these models is that they are watershed specific, so they really do provide that opportunity for locals and interested parties in those watersheds to really look at supply demand, but also the allocation tool, which we didn't talk as much about. The allocation tool really allows people to understand in a given water year or type of water year how they might be impacted at their level, and to work with others in their watershed to figure out how to best use water during those times of water shortage. So it allows, whether it's an in-stream flow requirement or just limited water supply condition, it provides that flexibility for people to really evaluate what impacts might be and to plan better for them, and understand when those might hit them more frequently or not in their watershed.
I just wanted to add two quick things. One is about those scenarios that Philip was talking about. We recently ran a couple of scenarios for water sharing program in Russian River. So we can do such a thing to see, to keep agencies, public, some information about how, for example, the summer gonna look like during like February, give them some scenarios so that they can do the management before even we reach to the time that we have a water shortage. Or another application for these tools is because these models gonna be publicly available. We're gonna provide technical information like a video instruction how to use the models. these are very critical for other aspects of water, like water quality analysis, TMDL analysis, stream temperature analysis. All of them require to know how much discharge or stream flow you have during along the river. So it is just a beginning. It can have lots of application in future.
Thank you so much. Really helpful.
Yeah, thank you, board member. Great questions. Board member Firestone.
Echo everything and just thank you for not just your work, but also the space to be able to present on this program. I think the more that people understand and are able to engage, the better. Super foundational for being able to do our job of administering the water rights system and protecting water resources, both of those. But like you said, also just a vital tool for local folks in the watershed. So I really just wanted to highlight, I appreciate one of the things that you put here around the potential uses as enabling folks to be able to consider different scenarios that otherwise they may not have the resources to do, especially, say, tribes or NGOs, community groups. And I know that I think somebody mentioned in the public comment, the Tribal GIS Summit, they're sort of highlighting the opportunities for tribes to develop projects and thinking about protecting water supply, but also highlighting the co-equal project, which is trying in the Bay Delta watershed to provide access to folks that typically don't have access to modeling resources and scenarios. And so, I know we're just at the beginning of this, and I think we're asking a lot of our different partners in terms of their time right now. But I do think we should have both a tribal and a kind of NGO strategy around engagement for this work as we develop it more, especially for being able to put it to use and utilize it for the types of projects locally that they're working on. And just, it's so vitally important, and really appreciate the work that's ongoing and the future work that will come.
Thank you, board member Vice Chair.
Well, I agree with everything that's been said. Thank you so much. This is, it's exciting because I didn't think that it would be this far along. I really thought that when this project started that we would be drilling into one area and then, really focusing on that before moving forward. So you've moved along in these other areas quite well. And my question has to do also with outreach. So if I look at the map, let's see, it's slide 8, where you show all the different areas, and just looking at what do these areas have in common as far as information sharing. And so board member Firestone, bringing up NGOs and tribes, they may not necessarily be sharing information. And so I think the public comment today on the GIS Summit, that's maybe a tool that could bring these different regions together, GSAs, through them talking with each other in different regions, Farm Bureau. And so just looking at ways that, because if we look at the Russian River, we've been in that watershed for a while, and some of these other areas not so. And so what I've noticed, in my time here is that people are busy and they focus on the crisis. And so just wanting to make sure that communities are engaged. This may, especially if we're not in the middle of a drought, it just may seem too theoretical, not something that they would focus on. And so really looking for ways as you do your outreach to encourage these different regions to share information because maybe some of the information that's been developed on the Russian River and the way water users or tribes are analyzing it that allows them to be engaged, that might help jumpstart engagement in some of these other areas.
I think there's public engagement is a never-ending process. There's always more we can do. I'm hearing and already brainstorming ideas from that on how we can connect some of the different watersheds together. I think there's a lot of room. We don't necessarily need to speak to each watershed one by one individually. There's a lot of overlap in what they're working on that they can learn from each other. And I think we might be in a position to help facilitate some of that type of shared understanding beyond maybe just the core scope of our work. So I think that's definitely something we'll note and take away as we start to develop the visualizations further, putting technical workshops on that are more globally focused to this effort. I think there will be an opportunity to have some of those peer-to-peer connections from the different watersheds. But I do, there's a very high degree of diversity in the data, the management, I often will kind of think of some of these watersheds as having some sort of centralized activity already, and a lot of these are fairly dispersed. And there's, to meet our needs from a selfish program perspective, if it's not centralized already, it takes a bit more effort for us to try and bring everyone together into a room and start to have that dialogue with everyone that we need to. And that's, it's an ongoing effort, that engagement.
Yeah, absolutely. And just, in the sector that I deal with quite a bit, the ag community, getting a public notice to comment on a model, it's hard to imagine in an area where there hasn't been a lot of work that there'd be that it would be a priority. But through communication and requests, like say with Farm Bureau or some of the GSAs, to say, hey, can you help ambassador this for us? Same thing with the tribal groups that maybe some have been involved in one watershed more so than the other, and encouraging. I'm just seeing doing this presentation, at various organizations, but explaining. The positive aspects, like what Board Member Firestone was mentioning about potential for projects. And then in terms of water use, really flagging the curtailment issue. And that when curtailments come along, that's not the time to be questioning the model. Question it now.
I do
as
see
it's
this
being
as being
developed.
the start of a roadshow of sorts, and being able to take this information and engaging with a wide variety of audiences, virtually, in person, wherever the need is to meet with them. We've been in and out of many watersheds and talking to anyone that's interested in us. So to anyone that's out there, we're happy to take the call and meet someone and share with what we can, and we'll continue to target our outreach and engagements to those audiences as well.
Thank you.
I just want to add to it that I think that's very critical for us to do that kind of outreach. We have a great team of technical people on running the model, developing the model, but each of these watershed, like a person, has different personalities, different characteristics, and we cannot understand it because we haven't lived there, we haven't worked there. So these outreach or contacting with public help us to understand those characteristics in details and better develop the model.
Really appreciate that, and thank you, Vice Chair, and plus up just the continued engagement. It's been a critical part of this. Board Member Morgan.
Well, hi. I think everything has been said, and just want to also just thank you guys for the just really great work here. Just on the outreach, just want to just add that, also to take a look at regional board meetings when they have a big item, that maybe, just reaching out to the regional boards and just ask them, hey, when you have a big item around, similar topics that where maybe there would be interested parties, that this would be, if you could give this item there also. And so just knowing that, especially I know Region 5's next board meeting is going to be up in Reading. I'm not sure what's all on that agenda, but it might be an opportunity to add on. You've done already a lot of work up in that area, so maybe that's one you have fully covered, but just other regions, the same type of thing, because that's a way to also just engage and bring more people to the table, just to engage and to have that discussion. So just another, I don't know, I want to call it a simple avenue to jump in and give this great presentation. So I also, just really want to thank you all. Just really, I was thinking as the vice chair that we would just be here talking about just about 3 watersheds, and here we have like 5 times that amount. So really, thank you for just continuing to move forward on this great work. And really, it's like as you're learning, you're staging the work and bringing in more and just really moving forward. It's just really great to see. And it truly is just amazing. I was just shocked when I saw the amount of watersheds that you're moving through and just really getting it to doing this now so that we have a tool when we need the tool. So really being proactive versus being reactive. So thank you all. Great work.
Here, here. Thank you, board member, and thank you all. Board members agree with all the comments here. And really, what strikes me is this is an opportunity for co-learning, co-learning with the watersheds, co-learning because we're not perfect at this. We're still very much at the start. We're behind other Western states when you look at the work that's gone on to administer water rights and establish in-stream flows. So this is foundational. And what's important is the trust. And so that's why I appreciate you all bringing this as an informational item here, elevating it so that we can communicate it more broadly out there, what's happening here, and find additional opportunities to work with folks in the watersheds. Because again, this is some of the most fundamental foundational work that we could be doing and comes at just a really critical time. So thank you to all your leadership here at the board generally, but importantly, the leadership at the watersheds that we're working in. That's what makes the difference here, and just really appreciative of the approach. This is all open source and replicable. This isn't a black box. People not, understanding how it is that we're coming to the numbers that we have. We're looking to be as communicative and open to folks and replicable when it comes to just the modeling work. And so appreciate the use of open source models and just the transparency within all of it. So much appreciation. Look forward to another update. And speaking of which, when do you think it would be useful to come back before us and let us know how things are going within the watersheds?
I would say probably middle of next year.
That sounds good. Yeah, appreciate that. And until then, again, for folks that are interested, the contact information was up earlier. There's a website dedicated to all of this, and just really appreciative of the leadership. So thank you. All right, that wraps up item number 2. Again, huge thanks to folks in the program for presenting. Let's go ahead and give ourselves a 10-minute break. We can bring ourselves back here at 10:25, and we'll continue on to item number 3, which is consideration of a rewrite of the underground storage tank regulations. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate the morning so far. We'll be back here 10:25. Just a quick note, Chris, I know we have you on to still deliver a public comment, and we will do that when we first come back here after the break. So thanks for popping back on and working with us. All right, everyone, we're here at 10:25. Hope everyone had a nice break. Brings us here to item number 3, which is consideration of a resolution to adopt underground storage tanks regulations rewrite. Good to see you all. Oh, apologies. Before we go into item number 3, I'm sorry, I keep doing this. We do have Chris Catlin from this morning, our public commenter, and like to take him now between our 2 items. Chris, good morning. Apologies
Good morning.
for throwing you on the spot. Thank you. Thanks for coming back to us here.
Oh, thanks very much, and I appreciate the second opportunity here. My name is Catlin, and I work in water treatment and advanced water treatment operations. And my topic here is to encourage the board to consider easing the requirements to obtain advanced water treatment and wastewater treatment certifications for advanced water treatment plants. I'm kind of grouping them together. The requirements are to have either a water or a wastewater certification plus the advanced water treatment certification. And a few things to consider in allowing folks to obtain those certifications would be to consider a path allowing out-of-state experience to get the higher levels of certification, the 4 or the 5 for drinking water certification, allowing experience credit to work under either a higher level water operator certificate, to allow experience credit for working under a higher level either water or wastewater certified chief operator. Basically what I'm asking for is to try to ease those requirements for the experience component to allow other pathways for people to gain the required certifications for advanced water treatment and also with the water and wastewater certification levels required to run these advanced treatment plants. And I think that would ease some of the operator shortage that we have to have a pool of qualified applicants to run the advanced treatment plants that are coming online in a kind of a growing fashion here. That's all I had. Thank you very much.
Really appreciate those comments, Chris, and thank you for the work you do within the sector for sure. And I know workforce development for myself and a number of board members has been a topic that we continue to do our best to try to advance and discuss. And to your point, our drinking water and wastewater operator certifications are probably our biggest kind of front door when it comes to, well, 1, the sector for sure, but 2, our engagement around workforce development issues. And so I really appreciate those recommendations. I know we've been working with AWWA and also our advisory groups, both on the wastewater and drinking water operator certification side to figure out, how we do better. I know, just to note, I know part of that discussion oftentimes has been about interoperability or exchange of the ability to see operators outside of the state and their experience and figure out how we get some reciprocity essentially within our program. I don't think that's something we've figured out yet, but would be something that I think I'd be certainly open to. So I just appreciate those comments, appreciate you addressing the board. And we do have your contact information in there, so maybe following up with you directly around some of your thoughts. So thank you. Appreciate that, Chris.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, that closes back out public comment and brings us to item number 3. And really appreciate folks. Again, this is a presentation around potential adoption of the resolution of a complete rewrite of the underground storage tank regulations. I'll kick it over to folks now.
Thank you,
Good to
Chair.
see you. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members of the board. My name is Tom Henderson. I manage the underground storage tank leak prevention unit. Today, we're going to request that the board adopt the modifications that we've made to Chapter 16, Title 23. We call them the Underground Storage Tank or UST regulations. With me today, my co-presenter is Austin Lemire Baton. He is our engineer and our project manager for this rulemaking. And also sitting up here with us to address any questions or comments is our guiding light, Julie Osborne, who has been navigating the Office of Administrative Law process with us, and she's here from the Chief Counsel. Next slide, please. And I do want to say that today is a very important day for me personally. In 1998, when I first got hired right out of college to go remove underground storage tanks, the first thing my manager did was give me Chapter 16 and said, learn this. And it was the most miserable event in my early career. And I just wanted to, at that particular moment in time, I knew that somebody needed to go ahead and work on these things. 8 years ago, the Division of Water Quality gave me the opportunity to rewrite these regulations. And so this is kind of the beginning of the end for this very long slog of a process for me. So one of the reasons we're rewriting this, and it really goes back to 1998, is that these are very difficult regulations to understand and very difficult to master as well, too. One of the problems that we have with owners and operators, and we deal with them on this regularly, is they don't understand what these regulations are about. And so when they put these together back in 1985, it was a really good thing, but we've added 27 amendments in that 40 years, and it's kind of Frankensteined this document together. So it makes it very difficult for them to understand. We really wanted to restructure this document for comprehension. We have a number of requirements for owners and operators that they've subbed out to different people because they struggle to be able to do these different aspects, like designated operator. One of the issues when California always has been kind of a leading edge on all things to include underground storage tanks. And so we have some technologies that were implemented back in the 80s and 90s that really are outdated at this point, but they're kind of locked into the law. And we also have new innovations that have been kind of written out of the law and capable. And we wanted to make sure that those were available to owners and operators as well. And finally, and probably the most important thing is that, again, I started this process 8 years ago, and this probably should have gone through 3 or 4 years ago, but we wanted to align it. It didn't make a lot of sense to rewrite this rulemaking and then do it again after we have a single wall closure that happens later this year. So we really wanted to align this rulemaking with that single wall closure. Because of that alignment, there have been some questions that have come up as to whether this rulemaking affects the single wall closure. It does not. We cannot. It has no bearing on the closure. That is in Health and Safety Code. It came out 11 years ago. And again, we're just setting up this rulemaking to be the post single wall regulations going forward. So, and I wanted to hit on that point just to make sure there might be comments and questions on that specifically. From here out, my co-presenter, Austin Lemire-Baton, will be talking about some of the details of this rulemaking. Thank you.
Next slide, please. Thanks. So as Tom mentioned, this is a complete rewrite of our Chapter 16 UST regulations. So we wanted to make sure that outreach was a critical aspect and something that we focused on. Beginning in the fall of 2022, over the course of 10 weeks, we had periodic workshops with select regulators and members of industry. We met periodically to kind of discuss what's worked in the past with the regulations and what they would like to see fixed as far as their concerns. From then on, we really began drafting these regulations, and the following year, in fall of 2023, we had 3 informational webinars for all interested parties. So people who subscribe to our UST email listserv would get this notification. We sent out notification in our 3 most common languages in the industry, English, Spanish, and Hindi. Those webinars were provided in those 3 languages and recorded on our webpage in case individuals couldn't meet at the live webinars. We continued drafting our regulations, and then in the spring of 2024, staff went to a statewide conference where we presented to several hundred regulators and industry members on the state of the regulations at that point. Presentation lasted about 3.5 hours, and we held time for questions and answers after that, which there were plenty of. After that, we continued drafting the regulations through 2024, and then in spring of earlier this year, attended another statewide conference and talked about the specific impacts of these regulations and what they would have on the different classes of UST personnel that we have. Next slide, please. Here's a look at our rulemaking review. Last November, we submitted our rulemaking notice to the Office of Administrative Law in November. That kicked off our 45-day public comment period. That ran from November 22nd through January 17th. We ended up extending that 45-day public comment period by 10 days at the request of some commenters who wanted additional time to review the rulemaking over the holidays. We had our public hearing here on January 13th, and our subsequent 15-day public comment period from May 2nd to May 19th. We are proposing to submit this rulemaking to the Office of Administrative Law this September with a proposed effective date of January 1st, 2026, which, as Tom mentioned, coincides with our single wall closure deadline in Health and Safety Code. Next slide, please. The next handful of slides will go through the high-level view of the significant amendments that we're proposing for these regulations. As Tom mentioned, this is a complete rewrite. We are getting rid of all references to single-walled USTs since they will be prohibited by the end of this year. That leaves a large chapter or section, I guess, missing from these regulations, so we decided it'd be a good time to reorganize it for readability as well. It flows easier after this rewrite. We also have updated and clarified regulatory language that had been kind of band-aided in the past that served its time. It was a good solution when it was implemented, but ultimately led to additional complexities in as far as the language is concerned. So we'll be simplifying that and making it more consistent in the rewrite. Next slide, please. We're also adding flexibility for, as Tom mentioned, emerging tech for UST owners and operators to implement regarding construction monitoring and test methods. Our current regulations are pretty prescriptive as far as these methods are concerned. You need to make sure you're jumping through the proper hoops in order to perform, your specific tasks. And moving forward, we'd like to be more focused on results instead of going through these specific processes. So ensuring that these test methods do meet minimum standards and are approved by the authorities that have jurisdiction over these facilities, we would allow alternative construction monitoring test methods to be used. We're also phasing out ineffective monitoring and spill prevention equipment. A lot of these regulations were originally drafted in the 20th century and have since there's new tech that is more up to our standards and is also more reliable, we find. So these proposed regulations have procedures in place for phasing out that equipment as it fails and replacing with more reliable equipment. Ultimately, this saves money due to fewer replacement and job costs. So we think that this will be a good proposition in our proposed regulations. Next slide, please. We're also defining what abandoned USTs are, and these are kind of frustrating to work with because it's hard to establish a point of responsibility for these tanks. They still typically have product in them, but no one wants to claim them. Defining these will help with inspection and enforcement on these systems before they're eventually closed. We will require periodic inspection on these by the authorities that have jurisdiction over them to make sure that they're not releasing into the environment and that we can get them closed out and that site remediated promptly. Also, in our proposed regulations, we have an exemption for emergency tanks at facilities that are licensed by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and this is consistent with federal regulations as well. We have one site in the state that is regulated by NRC as well, technically by our current regulations, and we don't find that after multiple site visits by staff that being regulated under our chapter really prevents any adverse effects to the environment. So consistent with federal regulations, we'd like to add that exemption to our proposed. Next slide, please. We're clarifying licensing requirements between UST installers and UST service technicians. These two class of individuals, obviously you installers are putting all the equipment in the ground, and our service technicians are the individuals out there who are testing and servicing these systems after installation. We're not changing the qualification requirements for these individuals, so people who currently meet the requirements for either UST installer or UST service technician won't have to jump through any other hoops when the proposed regulations become effective. But we are clarifying and separating out their scopes of work to make sure that the people who are properly licensed are doing the job that they're required to do. In line with promoting new technologies within the state, we're clarifying monitoring at unstaffed facilities. Since these regulations had been rewritten, there's been more technology that allows for remote monitoring of these sites that still adequately protects the soils and groundwater of the state. And if it provides more flexibilities to owners and operators as well, we'd like to include that in our proposed regulations. Part of the site remediation aspect of this is a new geo-tracker portal that will assist unified program agencies, those agencies that help enforce the UST program. It will help automate some of the communication that happens between the owners and operators of these facilities, the unified program agencies, and the cleanup oversight agencies. So there will be automated communication between those groups to make sure that none of these systems fall through the cracks, because there are some timelines associated with this that can lead these under current regulations to kind of slip through the cracks. Next slide, please. We'll also be requiring coordination between the regional water boards and the state water boards as far as site-specific variances are concerned. Site-specific variances allow certain UST facilities to have alternative construction, testing, or monitoring requirements if they meet certain conditions. Historically, this has been only a requirement of the regional boards, but we find that really the expertise in this field lies within the state water board. So we'll be requiring that coordination to occur between the regional boards and the state water board. These are rare, but historically, the regional boards do have a tendency to reach out to us with questions anyways, because they're not quite certain of some of the more technical side of this industry. All of our systems will have secondary containment in 2026, so we'll be requiring periodic interstitial monitoring on piping. This ensures that there's no blockage within the piping. If there is blockage in that piping interstice, it can mask releases to hazardous substances. So if you don't have a clear secondary containment, you don't necessarily know if you're having a release or not. So periodically, these systems will be required to be tested on their piping to make sure that they're not releasing to the environment. Last bullet on this slide refers to tank hold downs, and I added this picture as kind of an example. Our current regulations only require this in areas of high groundwater. However, we've seen that after storm events, even in areas with low groundwater, runoff can cause these tanks to become buoyant, and that's a fairly expensive issue to fix. Additionally, that typically breaks connections between rigid piping, which could obviously release hazardous substance into the environment. So it's a little bit of insurance to prevent something costly down the road. Next slide, please. We'll be requiring both the unified program agencies who enforce the UST regulations, as well as the state water board, to classify violations as either minor, class 2, or class 1 on their inspection and enforcement plan. This helps ensure that these systems are being enforced on consistently throughout the state. Additionally, it provides a pathway for graduated enforcement if there's facilities that have recalcitrant violations or otherwise longstanding violations. Minor violations can be elevated to a class 2 and so forth. We're also proposing to clarify roles between the unified program agencies. Again, those are those authorities that enforce these regulations, and the roles of cleanup oversight agencies, those being regional boards or local oversight programs that oversee site remediation. Our current regulations don't draw this distinction very clearly. We'd like to fix that in the proposed, because these two organizations do have different qualifications and levels of expertise and obviously roles within the UST program. So to keep people from stepping on each other's toes or stuff like that, we'd like to distinguish those roles and scopes of work. Next slide, please. That concludes our presentation. We're happy to take any questions or comments from the board.
Many, many thanks for the leadership for this rewrite and just for the good work of modernizing what was much needed modernization of the regulations. And at a time, timing it with the ending of single wall tanks and all of that, just really appreciate the good work that's gone on to shepherd this at a really important time for the program. I think it's certainly a workhorse here at the state board, the UST program, but doesn't get as much attention as sometimes the water rights or drinking water or other work that we do. So just really appreciative of the team and the work that goes on to protect our groundwater, protect our water resources, and do so in a way that continues to try to innovate. To your point, allowing new technologies to be able to come in, be able to adjust. It's a dynamic time certainly here in government and these issues generally. So just appreciate the engagement from the community as well in the update, and just a lot of thanks. No questions off the top for myself, but looking to fellow board colleagues if they have questions or comments. We do have a couple of commenters that we can go to hear from as well. All right, seeing none, let's go to our commenters. And I believe here our first commenter will be, apologies, I need to pull up my my list of folks again. First commenter will be Tom Jones, or apologies. Well, we'll go for Tom Jones first. He's here in person. And the commenter after that will be Jack Llanos. Good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning. Tom Jones representing Pacific Gas and Electric Company and Diablo Canyon. We're here to speak in support of the rewrite. We agree the modernization is appropriate, and also wanted to thank staff for their time and attention and multiple site visits to understand our complex system at the power generation facility. This action today that we do support aligns us with the 37 other states and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's oversight of the facility. So we're here to support again and happy to answer any technical questions that the board might have about this facility. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you as well. And thank you for hosting our folks to help understand the unique circumstance there, certainly at Diablo Canyon, and just appreciative of the engagement. Thank you. Thank you. And then our final commenter will be Jack Llanos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On behalf of the California Fuels Convenience Alliance, we appreciate the board's commitment to environmental protection and public safety. We fully support strong safeguards for California's underground storage tanks, but we do have some concerns about the feasibility of meeting the January 1, 2026 compliance deadline for certain provisions, specifically the anchoring requirements and new monitoring equipment. Many small independent businesses, the majority of those affected, face compliance costs that can exceed $90,000 per site. Without additional time, these operators risk severe financial strain or even closure. Compounding this challenge are delays in permitting, limited availability of qualified contractors, and some supply chain issues. These are factors beyond the operator's control, yet current guidance could subject them to penalties despite their good faith efforts. We also hear from many business owners who remain unsure about the technical steps needed to comply. Anchoring tanks, upgrading mechanical detection systems, and replacing spill containers require specialized knowledge that many small operators do not possess. Targeted education and outreach from the board can close this gap, giving businesses the tools to comply successfully. For these reasons, we respectfully request the board extend the compliance deadline for anchoring and monitoring equipment. 2, enhance outreach and education efforts focused on small businesses. And 3, encourage discretion and enforcement for operators making good faith efforts but facing delays beyond their control. Taking these steps will reduce financial strain, increase compliance, and help ensure that environmental goals are met without forcing closures or rushed substandard upgrades. Thank you for your time and your consideration. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Llanos. I appreciate those comments. One, when it comes to the closure, obviously, of the single wall tanks and no longer allowing those are set by the legislature. But when it comes to then the deadlines on the new requirements, the strap downs and some of that, can you remind us what the time frame is for folks to come into compliance? It's not January 2026. I imagine that's when the regs come into effect, or I could be wrong.
Chair, that's correct. So during the first 45-day comment period, CFCA actually requested that we extend this to 2027. We granted that request in the regulation. So the tie-down requirement followed exactly what was requested by CFCA. So that is January 1st of 2027. They wanted additional time because of, if the regulations went into effect on January 1st, we'd have to have tie-downs on January 1st. That's how we initially wrote this, but we made the extension based on their request.
That's really helpful, actually, and appreciate that clarification that, again, there's a full year before it comes into compliance. When it comes to the education and outreach component, just kind of wondering what the plans are I appreciated the suggestion that can be helpful. And I know it's something we think about certainly.
Yeah,
But
understood. Yeah, so we'll do a series of webinars starting probably in October, late October, early November on this. And we'll have those provided on our website as well in multiple languages as we get closer. Currently, we're doing a ton of guidance documents for owners and operators out there. So this is all part of the plan over the next several months, but we'll be announcing those very soon. It's very typical for when we do rulemaking for us to do 5 to 7 webinars on that to reach the largest number of stakeholders out there.
appreciate that. And for folks out there, if you are having convenings or there's things that we can be invited to and present, I know, very open to that as well. And then we'll certainly conduct webinars on our own steam. Appreciate all of that.
Thank you, Chair.
Looking to fellow board colleagues, if they have questions, comments, Board Member McGuire.
Yeah, thank you for those responses. It's really helpful. Just Mr. Llanos mentioned monitoring requirements also. Could you just speak a little bit to the implementation of that and the timing?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a particular type of monitoring device out there that was implemented in the early 90s. It was the very first one that they had. And it's one of the problems that we have in California when we are at the front end of everything. I was at a national committee and they were talking about this particular type of device. And they said, it's terrible. Y'all don't have to worry about it. It's a California problem. And it is a California problem because we were the first ones to put this in. It's a device that floats, that if there's instead of alarming, it actually floats and it shuts off the dispenser, but it doesn't necessarily shut off the fuel to these devices. And we find often enough that if we go to a facility, probably of 6 dispensers, 2 of them aren't working each and every time. So they'll wipe them down, they'll put them back in, they'll operate at that testing moment, and then we don't know when those are going to go out again. But it's very common to find the same facilities that are having the same problems with these, what we call float trips or mechanical trip devices out there. So the requirement that we have here is that we remove as these fail. It's not like we have a mass removal of these that is required of January 1st, but as these fail, that these need to be replaced with electronic devices. They do have electronic devices that we call standalone that sit inside of the dispenser or the unit itself and just shut off that particular. But we are going to, this is just a much more modern technology, even though it's not the most modern that we have out there, but it does get rid of these really, what we find, bad devices there that aren't really protecting the soil and water of the state.
Great, thank you. Really appreciate that.
Thank you, Board Member. Looking to other fellow board colleagues, if there's comment or question. Seeing none, we may be prepared for a motion then.
Great. If there's no others, I'd be happy to make a motion to adopt the resolution under item 3. And thank you very much for your work on this.
I'll second.
Thank you both. Ms. Tyler, can you please call a roll call vote?
Excuse me. Board Member McGuire.
Aye.
Board Member Firestone.
Aye.
Board Member Morgan.
Aye.
Vice Chair Diadamo.
Aye.
And Chair Esquivel.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you as well. The vote is unanimous. Congratulations on the rewrite. Great work. And for other folks out there in the institution that are looking at their own regs and thinking this needs a rewrite, this is inspiration to do so. Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Thank you, team. Really appreciate it. Congratulations. Right, that wraps up item number 3 and brings us to item number 4, which is board member reports. Looking to see if anyone is prepared. I think I can quickly jump in. Board Member Morgan.
I don't have a report.
Thank you for the report. I will quickly jump in and say, on August 20th, I had the pleasure of speaking at the California Water Data Summit, hosted by the California Water Data Collaborative, and attended by a number of sister agencies and other groups out there, including the Water Data Consortium. Just thanks, really appreciate the opportunity to address the folks. It was the 10-year anniversary of the Water Data Summit. It certainly brought me back to thinking over the course of the last 10 years and my involvement in the water data space, and just felt very fortunate to do my small part as a cheerleader more than anything, and to see just an incredible amount of growing individuals that are out there exposing, espousing the benefits of open data and decision making. And so just thanks, really appreciated that. And then on August 21st, I was at the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce on a panel with Adan Ortega, the chair of the Metropolitan Water District, and was moderated by Celeste Cantu, former chair down at the San Diego Regional Board. We just talked about water policy in the state, all the developments that are happening and the opportunities, importantly, for people to join regional boards and water district boards and join the decision-making that is so critical across our state and watersheds. So appreciated the opportunity to cover the work the board's doing, how it interacts with everyone else, and the importance of the work here in the years ahead. On the 22nd, we had an event, a memorandum of understanding signing with the nation of Denmark. Governor was there, signed. This is now our third MOU with Denmark, our first having started in the Brown administration. And it was just a fantastic opportunity to really continue to strengthen our relationship with Denmark and the Danes. There's a lot going on around, say, water loss and conservation and a lot of even data work. I know that our agencies here within the state of California are doing to work with Denmark. And it's just being able to kind of step outside of the particulars of our water management issues here within the state, align ourselves a bit with folks externally. It really does help us have a different perspective on what our water sector and what we can be and what we're moving toward, and just really appreciate that relationship and that opportunity. And then lastly, here on the 27th, I was at the Tillman wastewater treatment plant, now to be water reclamation plant. There's a water reuse project happening there in Los Angeles. The Tillman plant was originally going to do about 14 MGD. That has now been, or million gallons a day of recycled water. That now has been proposed to and is being implemented to be a 50 million gallon a day project. So it was great to be able to celebrate both with the regional board, certainly LA Department of Water and Power, LA SAN, just even importantly, advocates out there that have pushed LA to become more resilient and have a water supply that is here for the 21st century. So it was a neat event. Appreciated the invitation and opportunity to speak. That's my report. Vice Chair, please.
Real quickly, on August 20th, California Farm Bureau Federation had a board meeting here in Sacramento, and I was invited to appear before them and just talked about our busy agenda, all that we have going on here. And it was a really good discussion, focused mostly on irrigated lands, expert panel, and SGMA. Good discussion about SGMA. And I just am amazed that despite all the challenges that communities are having coming into compliance, that for the most part, there are, dedicated organizations up and down, well, throughout the state that are just really focused on sustainability and not fighting it. And, I appreciated the conversation because of their interest in learning more, in particular about the various subbasins that we've been working closely with and the process. And really cause, in large part for celebration, despite the fact that we, still have a couple of areas that are going to be quite challenging, but, them recognizing their responsibility.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Board Member McGuire.
Yeah, the only update I have is on August 26th. I spoke at the San Joaquin Valley Water Collaborative Action Program plenary group meeting, provided a process update on the Bay Delta Water Quality Control Plan, and a lot of interest in just understanding what it means for them and folks in the Valley. And we also had Eric Lobachevsky with Department of Water Resources there to provide his perspective on the Healthy Rivers proposal as well. So it was a good discussion.
Thank you, Board Member. Board Member McGuire, or Board Member Firestone.
Yeah. I was on a panel at the California Water Data Collaborative convening, and following your leadership, Chair, and my panel was on sharing data around drinking water affordability. And it was really fascinating what a number of water systems are doing, including Eastern was talking about what they've been doing in terms of just getting data from energy companies to help them target their outreach and sort of conservation programs to care households and things like that. It was really impressive. And, the whole effort is just so vital. So it was great to see all the different leaders there. That weekend, then I went to, I was able to participate in the Winnemem Wintu's Nur Egg ceremony on the McLeod. That was really, I think, so helpful for me. I've heard, I've known leaders within the Winnemem Wintu tribe for a long time, but I'd never actually been up to that area in person. And it was, it really helped me understand the, local watershed and the perspective and work that they've been doing, and the impacts of, particularly the dams on salmon in their watershed, and the work that they're doing to try to bring back the native salmon onto the reaches of the McLeod. So it was a fabulous experience and really helpful. And then the next week, I went down to Tulare County and participated in a joint regional meeting that OPEDA and the SAFER program have been working with, I think, 7 different communities that have been working for decades now and trying to develop a regional project. And it was a very helpful discussion, sort of collaborative around, how we can support them looking at regional projects, including potentially a surface water treatment plant component for the region, but really needing their leadership around consolidation and regionalization on the governance side. And I think, interestingly, we saw new participation from the management zone in the region around trying to support solutions for the communities there. And that was through the CV Salts management zones. So that's my update.
Awesome. Really appreciate that, board member. And before we transition to executive director's report, the other thing I think would be good to mention here in our board member reports is that both board member Morgan and I just cleared the Senate. So we've been confirmed for another 4 years. So thanks all. Yeah, just minutes ago. Yeah, just happened. It just happened. It just happened. So congrats, board member. Much appreciation to everyone for the support.
And congratulations to you too, Chair.
That wraps up board member reports and brings us to the executive director's report. Mr. Oppenheimer.
I don't have anything to add to this month's report, but we'll note we have a public commenter.
Thank you. It would certainly do, and appreciate always the good work that goes into the report. Quite the compendium as always. And we do have a commenter, so I'd like to call up Rosario Cortez. Rosario, good to see you today.
Okay.
More than okay. Yeah, please.
Perfect. Well, I think it's still morning, so good morning again. But Chair Esquivel, members of the State Water Resources Control Board, Rosario Cortez, Manager of Regulatory Affairs for Water Reuse California, thank you for the opportunity to address you on the volumetric annual report of wastewater and recycled water in California. We understand, obviously, that due to staff changes, this will be the only opportunity to publicly discuss the VAR findings. So again, thank you for your indulgence. We certainly appreciate the board's support of recycled water and potable reuse as a critical water supply in California. And it is a key resource for diversifying local supplies and improving the state's long-term water resilience, and increasing its use is a goal of the governor's water supply strategy. We would like to very much thank State Board staff for their ongoing communication and outreach on the VAR. Laura McClellan, who took this on this summer, and Rebecca Greenwood, who historically had been handling this. We really want to acknowledge Rebecca's work. Her years of ensuring that the data was collected was always of high quality. Her patient outreach with so many of our members. A 97% response rate is in great part a result of that open dialogue that the Division of Water Quality maintains and embraces. So we look forward to continuing to work with Laura and her team. We also wanted to provide brief context on why the numbers this year are modestly higher. And as you know, water years 2020 through 2022 were California's 3 driest on record, while 2024 water year ended with a wet season and an above average snowpack. In wet years like 2024, our members certainly observe that the precipitation can provide much of that necessary groundwater recharge, which reduces the demand for recycled water for existing groundwater replenishment projects. So despite these annual variations, potable reuse remains critical and is a great contributor for future and broader water resilience. And another piece of this annual variability in recycled water usage is the reduced irrigation demand due to the higher precipitation. The great thing about recycled water is that when dry periods and droughts inevitably return, it is there as a reliable water supply for many uses occurring throughout California. And I also wanted to point out one little item that we've discussed before, and that's the importance of counting water that is used for environmental purposes. While not technically Title 22 water, and therefore not included in the beneficial use categories of the VAR, recycled water dedicated to environmental uses is certainly taking pressure off of other resources and should be counted in these totals. And we certainly look forward to partnering with you to ensure that the benefits of environmental uses of recycled water are counted. And as you know, your module will open on January 1st, 2026, and that outreach will begin. And we certainly stand at the ready to help again and collaborate with you on ensuring that that response rate stays as high as it is, and especially in this time of transition. And we obviously share your commitment to climate resilient water resources, and obviously appreciate your support of recycled water. And thank you again for your time and your ongoing support. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Cortez. Really appreciate your advocacy and leadership here in the space. I appreciate the acknowledgement of Rebecca's great work and the team as they continue to work on ensuring that we have a good response rate, but we just have ensure that we have just really good data so we can continue to track this and advocate for the importance that we know that recycled water fits within California's water portfolio. So thanks for those comments. Appreciate you elevating that. Hadn't realized necessarily that we weren't going to do a presentation on the volumetric report this year. So appreciate you tracking that and providing an opportunity here just to acknowledge, thank, and lift up what is a really important data set with you and the board. So thank you. We appreciate it. All right, if there's anything further or not anything further, that closes out the executive director's report and brings us to the end of our meeting. But we will not adjourn. We will actually have closed session both on the Delta Conveyance Project and sites. Looking to fellow board colleagues if we would like to transition to that before lunch or take a lunch and then early lunch at that point and then transition to closed session. Anyone have a feeling? Board member, please.
I think we have plenty of time now to meet
Okay.
for a while.
If folks are okay
and then
for
take
that?
a break
Okay.
depending on how
Then
it goes.
then let's go ahead and give folks, I actually looked to Mr. Wiles. Do you know which room we're going to be in? Okay. It'll either be 2510 or 2540, I imagine. And we will give ourselves 20 minutes to get up there. So let's say we'll gather at 11:30 for closed session in either 2510 or 2540. What's that, Eric? Okay, we're in 2510. So 2510 at 11:30, we'll have closed session. Someone will come close us out. For everyone else, we will see you here in 2 weeks. Our next board meeting is, double check here. I don't have my date in front of me. Oh, here we are. September 16th and 17th. So we will see everyone here in 2 weeks on September 16th, 17th. Thank you, everyone. Have a fantastic time until then. Be safe, be well. Appreciate